What would you do if the man you hired to pretend to be your fiancé turned out to be the billionaire everyone in your company was desperate to impress? And what if he had been searching for you for 15 years? This is the story of Yoon Seo-yeon, a brilliant architect whose desperate lie spiraled into the most unexpected love story Seoul has ever seen. The morning rain fell softly over the Gangnam district, painting the glass towers in silver streaks. Inside the prestigious Hanwoo architecture headquarters, Seo-yeon clutched her portfolio against her chest like armor. Today was the day the firm would announce who would lead the design for the National Cultural Center, the most coveted project in South Korean architecture. 5 years of working overtime, sacrificing weekends, and enduring the endless scrutiny of her male colleagues had led to this moment. She had arrived at the office before dawn, unable to sleep, reviewing her presentation one final time in the empty conference room. The building she had designed existed first in her dreams, a structure that breathed with the seasons, its curved rooflines echoing the graceful hanbok silhouettes she remembered from her grandmother's silk shop. Every detail had been refined over 18 months of obsessive work. Miss Yoon. Director Park's secretary appeared at her cubicle, her expression unreadable. The board meeting has concluded. Director Park wishes to see you. Seo-yeon's heart hammered as she walked through the corridor. The walls were adorned with photographs of past award-winning projects, each one a testament to Hanwoo's legacy. She had dreamed of seeing her own designs on these walls since she was a child, sketching buildings in the margins of her school books while other girls drew flowers and hearts. Director Park's office occupied the entire corner of the 42nd floor, commanding views of both the Han River and Namsan Tower. The man himself sat behind a desk carved from Korean black pine, his silver hair combed back with meticulous precision. At 63, Park Sung-ho commanded the architecture world with an iron fist wrapped in silk gloves. Seo-yeon. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please sit. She obeyed, crossing her ankles in the way her grandmother had taught her. Never show nervousness. Keep your spine straight. Let them wonder what you are thinking. The board has reviewed all submissions for the Cultural Center project, Director Park began. His tone was measured, revealing nothing. Your design was innovative, bold. It captures the essence of traditional Korean aesthetics while embracing modern sustainability. The integration of Hanok architectural principles with contemporary materials was particularly impressive. A flutter of hope rose in her chest. She had spent countless nights researching traditional building techniques, consulting with historians and craftsmen, ensuring every element honored the past while serving the future. However, the word landed like a stone in still water. Several board members have expressed concerns about assigning such a significant project to someone in your circumstances. My circumstances, Director? His eyes met hers with something that might have been sympathy. Or perhaps it was merely the practiced expression of a man who had delivered disappointing news too many times to count. You are unmarried, 29 years old. In this industry, clients often prefer to work with individuals who demonstrate stability, family commitment. It reflects reliability. Seo-yeon's fingernails pressed into her palms hard enough to leave crescents in her skin. With respect, Director, my marital status has no bearing on my ability to design buildings. My portfolio speaks for itself. I agree. Personally, I find these concerns antiquated, but perception matters, especially for a project of this magnitude. The Cultural Center will represent Korea to the world. Foreign dignitaries, cultural ministers, international press, they will all scrutinize every aspect of its creation. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Additionally, I understand that Kim Tae-sung from our structural engineering department has been quite persistent in his attention toward you. Tae-sung. The name sent ice through her veins. For months, he had cornered her in hallways, sent unwanted gifts to her desk, and most recently, convinced his father, a major shareholder, to pressure her into accepting his dinner invitations. She had filed complaints with HR twice, only to have them quietly dismissed. Director Park, I have no interest in Senior Engineer Kim. I have made that abundantly clear to him on multiple occasions. Be that as it may, his father has significant influence over board decisions. Kim Dong-cheol holds 15% of our company. When he speaks, the board listens. Director Park's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. If you were already committed to someone, it would resolve multiple concerns at once. The board would see you as stable. Kim Sr. would have no grounds to push his son's agenda, and you could lead the project without interference. The implication hung in the air between them like smoke. I understand, Seo-yeon heard herself say. Her voice sounded distant, as if coming from another room. Perhaps there is something I should tell you about my personal life. Director Park raised an eyebrow. I am engaged. The lie tumbled out before she could stop it. I simply preferred to keep my private life separate from work. I've seen how relationships become fodder for office gossip. Engaged? Interest flickered in his eyes. To whom? Her mind raced through every name she had ever heard in business circles, landing on the most intimidating one she could recall from a recent news article about sustainable technology investments. Kang Ji-hoon, of the Kang Corporation. The silence that followed was deafening. Director Park's composed facade cracked slightly, revealing genuine surprise that he quickly masked. Kang Ji-hoon, the chairman's son, the one who just returned from running their European operations? Seo-yeon had no idea about any of that. She had merely remembered the name from a headline she'd glanced at during her morning commute. But she nodded with all the confidence she could muster. We met years ago. He's been overseas for some time, but we've maintained our relationship despite the distance. Well? Director Park straightened several papers on his desk, clearly recalibrating his entire assessment of the woman before him. That certainly changes things. The Kang family's connections in government and infrastructure would be invaluable for a project like the Cultural Center. Their technology subsidiaries have been at the forefront of sustainable building materials. I would prefer that my relationship not be the reason I receive this opportunity, Seo-yeon said carefully, recognizing that she was walking a tightrope over a canyon. I want the project on merit. Naturally. But she could see the calculations running behind his eyes, the political equations being rewritten. I will inform the board of your engagement. We'll announce the project lead tomorrow. And Seo-yeon? Perhaps you might consider bringing your fiancé to our company gala next Friday. The Minister of Culture will be attending, along with several key government officials. It wasn't a suggestion. Seo-yeon walked out of the office in a daze. What had she done? Kang Ji-hoon was practically royalty in Korean business circles. His family controlled billions in assets across technology, manufacturing, and real estate. If anyone discovered her lie, her career would be destroyed. She would never work in architecture again. She might even face legal consequences for attempting to defraud the company. Her phone buzzed. A message from her grandmother's caretaker. Mrs. Yoon had another episode today. The doctor says the surgery cannot wait much longer. Please call when you can. Seo-yeon pressed her palm against the cool window, staring down at the city sprawled beneath her like a circuit board of dreams and desperation. Her grandmother had raised her single-handedly after her parents died in a car accident when she was 14. The woman had sold everything: her jewelry, her savings, even her late husband's precious calligraphy collection, to put Seo-yeon through architecture school. Now a brain tumor threatened to take her, and the experimental treatment at Samsung Medical Center cost more than Seo-yeon could earn in 10 years. The Cultural Center project came with a substantial bonus, enough to cover half the surgery. The other half, she would find a way. She had to. But first, she needed a fiancé. That evening, Seo-yeon sat in her small Mapogu apartment, scrolling through her phone with increasing desperation. The apartment was modest. A single room with a kitchenette, decorated with photographs of buildings she admired and sketches of structures she hoped to create someday. Dating apps were useless for her purposes. She needed someone who could convincingly play a billionaire's heir for one evening. Someone who understood high society protocols, the subtle dance of power and politeness. Someone who wouldn't expose her lie. Professional escort services, she muttered, typing into the search bar. The results made her wince. Too many questionable websites, too many risks, too many horror stories waiting to happen. Then she stumbled upon it. Accompaniment, plus, professional social companions for business events. The website was sleek, professional, and surprisingly legitimate looking. Customer testimonials spoke of successful business dinners, family gatherings, and corporate events. All interactions guaranteed platonic. Background verified. Confidentiality assured. We provide professional actors and social consultants trained in etiquette, conversation, and discretion. All companions are extensively vetted and sign non-disclosure agreements. Your privacy is our priority. The price made her eyes water, 500,001 per hour, but the alternative was worse. She filled out the request form, specifying that she needed someone who could plausibly pass as a member of Seoul's elite for a corporate gala. Someone with knowledge of business, comfortable with wealth, capable of charming government ministers. The confirmation came within minutes. Your companion has been selected based on your requirements. He will contact you tomorrow to discuss details. Thank you for choosing Accompaniment Plus. Seo-yeon stared at her phone, wondering if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Then she thought of her grandmother lying in that hospital bed, counting days that were running out. She thought of 5 years of work and sacrifice about to be stolen by a man who couldn't accept rejection. Whatever it cost, she would see this through. The next morning brought an unknown number to her screen. She answered on the third ring, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. Hello? Miss Yoon Seo-yeon. A deep voice, warm and surprisingly gentle, with the kind of educated accent that spoke of international schooling. I'm calling about your booking through Accompaniment Plus. I understand you need assistance for a corporate event. Yes, a gala at my company. Hanwoo Architecture. I need someone who can pretend to be my fiancé for the evening. A pause. Pretend to be your fiancé. That's more involved than most requests. May I ask what role I would be playing specifically? She hesitated. Lying to a stranger felt different from lying to Director Park. More personal somehow. I may have told my boss that I'm engaged to someone. Important. To protect my position at work. I see. No judgment in his tone. Just curiosity and perhaps a hint of amusement. How important are we talking? Kang Ji-hoon, of the Kang Corporation. The silence stretched so long she thought the call had dropped. She checked her screen, still connected, still counting the seconds. Are you still there? She asked. Yes. His voice had taken on an odd quality she couldn't identify. Something between surprise and something else. Recognition? Interest? You want me to pretend to be Kang Ji-hoon at your company gala. I know it sounds insane, but I've done research. He's been abroad for years, running operations in Europe. There are almost no photos of him online as an adult. Just old family portraits from when he was a teenager. No one at my company has met him in person. And if they have, then I'm finished anyway. But I have to try. There's too much at stake. She thought of her grandmother lying in that hospital bed, attached to machines that measured what remained of her time. Will you do it? Another pause. She could almost hear him thinking, weighing options she couldn't see. Meet me at Café Sana in Samcheong-dong, 7 o'clock tonight. We should discuss this in person before agreeing to anything. How will I recognize you? Don't worry. A hint of warmth entered his voice. I'll find you. The call ended. Seo-yeon stared at her phone, her reflection ghostly in the dark screen. Whatever happened next, there was no turning back. Café Sana was tucked between a traditional Hanok guest house and a contemporary art gallery. Its weathered wooden sign barely visible in the evening light. The neighborhood of Samcheongdong had always been one of Seoyeon's favorites, a place where old Seoul and new Seoul existed in comfortable proximity, where grandmother restaurants served kimchi jjigae next to minimalist coffee shops. She arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table where she could watch the entrance. She ordered a citron tea she had no intention of drinking and tried to still her trembling hands. The cafe was quiet this time of evening, occupied by a few couples and a student bent over a laptop. At exactly 7 o'clock, the door opened. He was tall, taller than she expected, with broad shoulders that filled out a simple navy coat of obvious quality. His face was angular, aristocratic almost, with high cheekbones and dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His hair was black, slightly longer than corporate standards, and when he moved, it was with the unconscious grace of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. He spotted her immediately. Of course he did. She was the only woman sitting alone, radiating nervous energy like a beacon. "Miss Yoon," he slid into the seat across from her, and she caught a hint of something expensive, sandalwood and cedar, with an undertone of something she couldn't identify. "Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for taking this job. I know it's unusual." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, not mocking, but genuine, as if she had said something unexpectedly delightful. "You could say that. Most clients want a date for a wedding or a +1 to make an ex jealous. You want me to impersonate one of the richest men in Korea. I'm Jun Seo, by the way." Jun Seo. The name suited him. Refined. Traditional. She watched as he ordered a black coffee with the casual authority of someone accustomed to being served, someone who had never had to check prices or count change. "Tell me everything," he said, settling back in his chair. "Why Kang Ji-hoon specifically? Why this lie? I need to understand the full situation if I'm going to help you." So she told him about the cultural center project that could define her career, about Taesung's unwanted advances and his father's influence over the board, about her grandmother's surgery and the bonus that could save her life, about years of being passed over for promotions that went to less talented men with better connections. The words poured out like water through a cracked dam, and through it all, Jun Seo listened without interruption, his expression unreadable, but his attention unwavering. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Your grandmother," he finally said. "What's her name?" Yoon Hye. "Why do you ask?" Something flickered in his eyes, too quick to identify, there and gone like lightning. No reason. Just curious about the woman who raised someone willing to risk everything for her. Not many people would do what you're doing. "She gave me everything. I would do anything to give her more time." Jun Seo nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. "The gala is Friday. That gives us 4 days to prepare. I'll need to know everything about your company, your colleagues, your history. Every detail that might come up in conversation. Any landmines I should avoid. Any allies I should cultivate." "You'll do it?" Relief flooded through her with such force that she nearly cried. "On one condition." He leaned forward, and for a moment, she felt pinned by the intensity of his gaze. "After the gala, you tell me the truth, all of it, no more lies between us." It was a strange request from a hired companion, but she was in no position to argue. "Deal." "Then we have work to do." He pulled out his phone, opening a notes app. "Start from the beginning. How did Yoon Seo-yeon become an architect?" For the next 3 hours, they talked. She told him about her childhood in Jeonju, the ancient city of scholars and tradition, about the traditional hanok house where her grandmother still lived until the hospital claimed her, with its curved roof and paper windows, and the courtyard where she'd learned to make kimchi. She told him about discovering architecture through a picture book of famous buildings, about the moment she'd seen Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water and understood that buildings could be poetry. She told him about winning a scholarship to study in Seoul, about the years of struggle to be taken seriously in a male-dominated field, about the professor who told her women didn't have the spatial reasoning for architecture, about the client who refused to meet with her alone because she was too pretty to be smart, about every small victory and crushing defeat that had led her here, to this cafe, hiring a stranger to lie for her. In return, he shared carefully edited glimpses of his own life, business school abroad, years of travel through Europe and America, a complicated relationship with his family's expectations. He spoke of London rain and Parisian cafes and Swiss mountains, of the loneliness of always being in transit. She found herself drawn to his quiet intelligence, the way he asked questions that cut straight to the heart of things. "There's something I should mention," she said as the cafe began to close around them. "I showed Director Park a photo of Kang Ji-hoon once, from an old magazine article about the Kang family. The picture was from maybe 15 years ago, when he was still a teenager. You don't look exactly like him." Junseo's smile was enigmatic. People change in 15 years. Besides, I have a theory that wealthy heirs all look alike to people who don't actually know them. Expensive clothes, confident posture, the right watch, the right vocabulary. The details fill in the rest. People see what they expect to see. He wasn't wrong. The next day, he arrived at her apartment with 3 garment bags and a box from a jeweler that bore a name she recognized from magazine advertisements. "For the role," he explained, laying out designer suits and silk ties with the practiced ease of someone who had done this many times before. "Appearances matter, especially in the world you're asking me to navigate. I can't afford to reimburse you for all this. Consider it an investment in my craft. If this works, I get paid. If it doesn't..." He shrugged. "I have other jobs, but I don't intend to fail." They spent the remaining days rehearsing. He quizzed her on Kang Corporation's holdings, the semiconductor factories, the sustainable energy division, the real estate portfolio spanning 3 continents. He made her recite the fictional story of how they met. "A charity gala in Paris. You were raising funds for architectural preservation. I was there representing my family's foundation. We argued about sustainable materials and heritage restoration. By the end of the night, I knew I had to see you again." He taught her the subtle body language of a woman comfortable with wealth. "Don't look at prices," he instructed during a practice dinner at an upscale restaurant in Cheongdam-dong. "Don't thank servers excessively. Acknowledge them, but don't fawn. Move through the world as if it was built for you. Because in many ways it was. You just haven't claimed your place in it yet." "That sounds exhausting." "That's because you have a conscience." There was something almost wistful in his voice. "It's one of the things He stopped abruptly. "One of the things you..." "What?" "Nothing. Try the wine. We need to work on your tasting vocabulary. If someone asks about the vintage, you should have something intelligent to say." By Friday, Seo-yeon felt as prepared as she would ever be. She stood before her bathroom mirror in a dress that had cost her entire savings, a deep burgundy gown that Junseo had helped her select, elegant without being ostentatious. The color brought out the warmth in her skin and the determination in her eyes. "Remember," his voice came through her earbuds. They had decided to maintain an audio connection throughout the evening in case she needed prompting. "Confidence is 90% of deception. The other 10% is timing." "You sound like you've done this before." A dry laugh. "You have no idea." The Hanwoo Architecture Gala was held at the Shilla Hotel's Grand Ballroom, a space that had hosted presidents and royalty. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across parquet floors, and the city's most influential figures mingled beneath ceiling frescoes depicting the 4 seasons. The air was thick with expensive perfume, political ambition, and the careful laughter of people performing wealth. Seo-yeon spotted Junseo waiting by the entrance, resplendent in a charcoal suit that made him look like he'd stepped off the cover of a business magazine. When he saw her, something shifted in his expression. something raw and unguarded that disappeared so quickly. She wondered if she'd imagined it. "You look beautiful," he said simply, then offering his arm. "Shall we begin?" They entered together, and the effect was immediate. Heads turned. Conversations paused. She could feel the weight of countless eyes assessing, calculating, wondering. Who is she? Who is he? What does this mean for the game we're all playing? "Seo Yeon!" Director Park materialized from the crowd, his wife on his arm in a dress that cost more than Seo Yeon's annual salary. And this must be the elusive Kang Ji-hoon. "I must say, you're not quite what I expected." Junseo's smile was perfectly calibrated, warm but not eager, friendly but not familiar. "People rarely are, Director Park. Thank you for hosting such a magnificent event. Seo Yeon speaks very highly of your leadership at Hanwoo. She says you've been instrumental in preserving space for genuine talent in an industry that often prioritizes connections over capability." Does she now? Director Park's eyes flickered between them, searching for cracks in the facade. "I'm surprised we haven't met before, given your family's involvement in infrastructure development. The Kang Corporation's Sustainable Materials Division has been on our radar for some time. I prefer to operate behind the scenes. My father handles the public face of Kang Corporation, the press conferences, the ribbon cuttings, the political dinners. I focus on the work that actually matters, the research, the development, the long-term strategy that no one sees until it's already changing the world." Junseo's tone carried just the right edge of privileged disdain for publicity. Director Park chuckled, clearly charmed despite himself. "A man after my own heart. The substance rather than the show. Please, help yourselves to refreshments. The Minister of Culture is eager to meet the couple who might be shaping Korea's architectural future." As they walked away, Seo Yeon exhaled slowly. That was just the beginning. Stay alert. The real tests are coming. The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Junseo navigated the social waters with an ease that went beyond training. He knew which fork to use at the various food stations, which topics to avoid with which politicians, which jokes would land with which audience. More than once, she caught senior executives nodding approvingly, impressed by his insights on market trends and policy developments. "How do you know all this?" she whispered during a brief lull by the champagne fountain. "I read a lot," he replied, but his eyes were scanning the room, watchful. "Stay close. I see someone approaching who doesn't look friendly." Then disaster arrived in the form of Kim Tae-sung. He pushed through the crowd like a man with a mission, his face flushed from champagne and wounded pride. His suit was expensive but ill-fitting, as if tailored for the man he wanted to be, rather than the man he was. "Seo Yeon, I heard the most interesting rumor about you." "Tae-sung." She kept her voice neutral, professional. "I don't believe you've met my fiancé." Tae-sung's gaze swept over Junseo with undisguised contempt. "So this is the famous Kang Ji-hoon. Funny. My father had dinner with the Kang family just last month. He didn't mention anything about an engagement to some nobody architect." Junseo's expression didn't waver. "I prefer to keep my personal life private. Family dinners aren't the occasion for announcing romantic commitments. I'm sure you understand the value of discretion. Or perhaps you don't. You seem like someone who says whatever comes to mind." Tae-sung's face reddened. "What I understand is that something doesn't add up. My father knows Chairman Kang personally. They've been business partners for 20 years. He says Ji-hoon has been living in London for the past decade, running their European operations. He's never mentioned any engagement." "Tae-sung," Seo Yeon intervened. "This isn't the place for this conversation." "No, I think it's exactly the place." Tae-sung was playing to the gathering crowd now, enjoying the spectacle of what he thought would be her humiliation. "Why don't we call Chairman Kang right now, clear this whole thing up? I have his personal number, a gift from my father." Seo Yeon's blood turned to ice. This was it. The moment everything fell apart. Junseo reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone with terrifying calm. By all means, let me save you the trouble. He dialed a number from memory. The room had gone silent. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. Seo-yeon wanted to run, to disappear into the floor, to be anywhere but here watching her entire future crumble. Father, Junseo's voice carried across the ballroom with quiet authority. I apologize for disturbing your evening. I'm at a business function with my fiancé, and there seems to be some confusion about my identity. Would you mind confirming for the gentleman here that I am, in fact, your son? He put the phone on speaker. The voice that emerged was unmistakable. Chairman Kang Jun-hyun, one of the most powerful men in South Korea, whose face appeared regularly in newspapers and whose decisions moved markets. Ji-hoon? What kind of nonsense is this? Of course you're my son. Why would anyone question that? A Kim Tae-sung. His father apparently dines with you regularly. A pause, then coldly. Kim Dong-cheol's boy. Tell him his father may want to reconsider his company's investments if this is how the Kim family conducts themselves at social functions. Embarrassing an heir of the Kang family in public is not something we forget. Tae-sung had gone pale as fresh tofu. There must have been a misunderstanding. My sincere apologies, Mr. Kang. Chairman Kang, Junseo corrected, his voice silk over steel. When addressing my father, use his proper title. Chairman Kang, of course, my deepest apologies. The call ended. The crowd dispersed with the practiced nonchalance of people pretending they hadn't just witnessed a social execution. Tae-sung slunk away. His earlier bravado shattered into 1,000 pieces. Seo-yeon couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her mind was spinning, trying to process what had just happened. Junseo, no, Ji-hoon, turned to her with an expression she couldn't read. I believe I owe you an explanation. You're him, she whispered. You're actually Kang Ji-hoon, the real one. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private. There are still too many ears in this room. He guided her through the service corridors to a small garden terrace overlooking the city. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of late-blooming chrysanthemums. Below them, Seoul sparkled like a circuit board, millions of lives blinking in the darkness. The contrast between the stuffy ballroom and this peaceful space was jarring. Why? It was the only word she could manage. Ji-hoon leaned against the stone railing, his carefully constructed composure finally cracking. 3 weeks ago, my mother informed me that she had selected a bride. Han Yu-jin, the daughter of a family with the right connections, the right pedigree, the right everything. A merger disguised as a marriage, another business transaction dressed up in wedding clothes. And you didn't want it. I've spent my entire life doing what my family wanted. The right international schools, the right career path, the right face for the shareholders. But marriage? He laughed bitterly. That I wanted to choose for myself. Is that so unreasonable? So you, what, pretended to be a professional escort? I invested in Accompaniment Plus years ago. Quietly. Through shell companies my family doesn't know about. It started as a business venture. There's always a market for discretion. But I found myself fascinated by the clients. People desperately trying to navigate worlds they weren't born into. People lying to survive. He turned to face her. When I saw your request, a woman looking for someone to pretend to be me, I was curious. I wanted to see who would be desperate enough or brave enough to try something so audacious. And instead you found someone desperate enough to lie for her grandmother. The words came out sharper than she intended. I found someone brilliant, determined, and completely unimpressed by wealth or status. His voice softened. Someone who reminded me of a girl I met once, a very long time ago. Seo-yeon frowned. I don't understand what you mean. Ji-hoon reached into his pocket and withdrew something small. A worn leather cord threaded through a jade pendant carved in the shape of a lotus flower. The stone was worn smooth from years of handling, the cord frayed but carefully maintained. Her breath caught. "Where did you get that?" "You don't remember." It wasn't a question. Memories surfaced like fragments of a dream. Jeonju, 15 years ago. The summer before her parents died, before everything changed. A boy. Thin, awkward, clearly out of place among the market stalls and street vendors in his expensive clothes. He had been sitting alone on a temple step, crying quietly into his hands while tourists flowed past without noticing. "I'm lost," he had said when she approached, his accent marking him as a soul boy, foreign in this provincial place. "My driver was supposed to meet me an hour ago. I don't know where to go." She had been 14, fearless in the way only teenagers can be. "Then stay with me until someone finds you. My grandmother's shop is right there. She makes the best yuja tea in Jeonju." They spent the afternoon together. She showed him her grandmother's silk store, the bolts of fabric in colors like captured sunsets. She taught him how to fold paper cranes. 100 cranes for a wish, her grandmother always said. She shared her dreams of building impossible towers that touched the clouds, and he had listened with the intensity of someone who had never been truly heard before. When his driver finally arrived in a car worth more than her grandmother's house, the boy had pressed something into her hand, a jade lotus pendant. "My grandmother gave this to me," he said, "for protection. But I think you need it more than I do." "Why would you give this to me?" "Because you're brave enough to dream out loud. Most people hide their dreams like they're shameful. You wear yours like armor." She had kept that pendant until her parents' accident, when it was lost in the chaos of the funeral and the move to Seoul. She had thought of the boy sometimes, wondering if he ever remembered the girl who taught him to fold paper cranes in a provincial silk shop. "Ji-hoon," she breathed. "That was you." "I went back to Jeonju every summer for 3 years," he said quietly, "looking for the girl with the big dreams and the grandmother who sold silk. But the shop was gone. You were gone. No one remembered a girl named Seo-yeon. My grandmother closed the shop after my parents died. We moved to Seoul. She wanted me to have better opportunities, better schools, a chance at the life my parents couldn't give me anymore. I searched for you." His voice was rough. "For years. I hired investigators after I was old enough to do so without my parents knowing. But I didn't even know your full name. Just that a girl named Seo-yeon had shown kindness to a lost boy when no one else would. And then my request appeared on your escort service." "Fate," he said simply. "Or whatever you want to call it. The universe correcting a 15-year mistake." Seo-yeon took the pendant from his hand, the jade cool against her palm. 15 years, an entire lifetime of diverging paths, and somehow they had circled back to each other. What were the odds? What cosmic joke or blessing had arranged this reunion? "What happens now?" she asked. "Now I tell you the truth." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "I didn't come to that cafe because I was curious about your lie. I came because I wanted to meet the woman who invented a fake engagement rather than compromise her integrity. I stayed because you're extraordinary, and I kept your secret tonight because I'm not ready for this to end. This, whatever this is between us, whatever it could become." The noise of the gala filtered through the doors, champagne toasts and polite laughter and the endless performance of society. But here, in this small garden suspended between earth and sky, there was only honesty. "I can't offer you anything," Seo-yeon said. "I have a grandmother dying in a hospital bed. I have a career hanging by a thread. I have nothing that your family would consider acceptable. My family doesn't get to decide who I love." The word hung in the air between them like a held breath. "Love?" she repeated. "I've been looking for you for 15 years. His hand cupped her face, gentle as a prayer. "Maybe it took a lie to bring us back together, but everything I feel for you is real." She wanted to believe him. Every cell in her body wanted to lean into his touch, to accept this impossible gift. But reality pressed against her like a cold wind. Your mother chose a bride for you. The board, the shareholders, they all have expectations. You can't just... Then I'll change their expectations. His jaw set with determination. I've spent my entire life being Kang Ji-hoon, the perfect heir, the dutiful son. Maybe it's time to find out who I am when I get to choose. Before she could respond, the terrace door burst open. A woman stood there, elegant in silver silk that caught the moonlight like armor. Her face was perfectly composed despite the fury in her eyes. Behind her, Director Park hovered nervously, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. Ji-hoon. The woman's voice could have frozen the Han River in midsummer. Your father called me. Would you care to explain what is happening here? Mother. Ji-hoon stepped between the woman and Seo-yeon, shielding her instinctively. I was wondering when you'd arrive. Kang Myung-hee, the formidable matriarch of the Kang Empire, surveyed Seo-yeon like a scientist examining an insect specimen. This is her? The architect who invented a fake engagement to my son? The engagement is no longer fake, Ji-hoon said calmly. I've decided to make it real. The silence that followed was absolute. You cannot be serious. Myung-hee's composure cracked slightly. You have responsibilities, commitments. Han Yoo-jin's family has been preparing for the announcement for months. The stock price alone. Yoo-jin will find someone better suited to an arranged marriage, someone who actually wants one. This isn't about what you want. It's about what's best for the company, for the family, for the legacy your grandfather built. And what about what's best for me? Ji-hoon's voice rose, carrying across the garden. For 29 years, I've done everything you asked. Every school, every job, every sacrifice. But you don't get to choose who I spend my life with. That's the one thing I won't give you. Myung-hee's gaze turned to Seo-yeon with the full weight of decades of power. I've had you investigated, orphaned at 14, raised by a grandmother who's currently in the hospital with a brain tumor. No family connections of value, no inheritance, no social position. What could you possibly offer my son that he couldn't find in 100 other women with better qualifications? Mother, let her answer. Seo-yeon felt the weight of every eye upon her. Director Park, pale and conflicted, Myung-hee, coldly assessing, and Ji-hoon, watching her with something that looked terrifyingly like faith. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, spoke with a clarity that surprised even herself. You're right, Mrs. Kang. I have no connections, no wealth, no pedigree. I have nothing but a grandmother who taught me to be honest, a dream I've worked toward for 15 years, and a debt to your son that I can never repay. A debt? When I was 14 years old, a lost boy gave me a jade lotus and told me I was brave enough to dream out loud. That kindness carried me through the hardest years of my life. It made me believe I could become an architect, even when every professor and client and colleague told me I couldn't. I didn't know he was a king. I didn't know he would become a billionaire. I only knew that someone saw me when I felt invisible. That's something money can't buy. Myung-hee was silent for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression, too subtle to interpret. You speak well, she finally said, but words are easy. Actions are what matter. If you truly care about my son, prove it. Win your project on your own merit without Ji-hoon's influence. Build something worthy of the cultural center. Show the world, and me, that Yoon Seo-yeon deserves to stand beside a Kang. And if I do, then we'll have another conversation. She turned to Ji-hoon. You have until the project announcement to convince me this isn't a mistake. Don't disappoint me. She swept away like a winter storm passing through, leaving devastation and possibility in her wake. Director Park cleared his throat awkwardly. Well, that was... I should return to the gala. Seo-yeon, we'll discuss the cultural center on Monday. When they were finally alone, Ji-hoon let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. I'm sorry. I never intended for you to face her like that. She's not wrong. Seo-yeon looked down at the jade lotus still clutched in her hand. I do need to prove myself. Not for her approval, for my own. You have nothing to prove to anyone. Maybe not, but I have something to prove to myself. She looked up at him, a new determination settling into her bones. I'm going to win that project, Ji-hoon. Not because of you, not because of any connection or favor, because my design is better, because I've earned it. He smiled, a real smile, one that transformed his entire face. That's the girl who gave shelter to a lost boy. That girl grew up. She squared her shoulders. Now she's going to build something that lasts. Over the following days, Ji-hoon proved to be more than a partner in deception. He became a genuine ally. He introduced her to engineers who could answer technical questions about the Kang Corporation's sustainable materials. He connected her with designers who had worked on similar large-scale cultural projects. He even arranged a private tour of a recently completed museum in Singapore that shared some of her design philosophy. You're going above and beyond, she told him after one particularly exhausting but illuminating meeting. This isn't part of our arrangement. Our arrangement? He raised an eyebrow. I think we moved past arrangements a while ago. She couldn't argue with that. Somewhere between the cafe in Samcheongdong and this moment, the boundaries between performance and reality had blurred. When he looked at her now, she didn't see an actor playing a role. She saw a man who had searched for her across 15 years, who carried a child's drawing in his wallet, who believed in her talent before she believed in it herself. What are we doing, Ji-hoon? Really? I think we're figuring it out as we go along. He smiled that rare, genuine smile. Isn't that what life is? The weeks that followed were the most intense of Seo-yeon's life. She worked around the clock, refining her design for the cultural center, until every line sang with purpose. The building she envisioned was a dialogue between past and future. Traditional Korean curved rooflines rendered in sustainable glass and steel, gardens that flowed through the structure like water, spaces designed to breathe with the changing seasons. She incorporated geothermal heating, rainwater harvesting, living walls that would filter the city's air. But she wasn't alone anymore. Ji-hoon visited her grandmother daily, arranging for the best specialists at Samsung Medical Center, ensuring she received the most advanced treatment available for her brain tumor. He never mentioned the cost, and Seo-yeon learned not to ask. Every time she tried, he would change the subject with such obvious discomfort that she let it go. Yoon-hye, for her part, took an immediate liking to him. He folds paper cranes, she told Seo-yeon during one visit, her voice still weak, but her eyes bright with knowing. Perfectly, like he's been doing it his whole life. He had a good teacher, Seo-yeon replied, not quite meeting her grandmother's knowing eyes. At work, things were more complicated. News of the gala confrontation had spread through Hanwoo architecture like wildfire. Seo-yeon found herself the subject of whispers, sidelong glances, and thinly veiled questions about her relationship with the Kang heir. Some colleagues were supportive. Min-jun, a junior architect who had been her only real friend at the company, brought her coffee and defended her against gossip. Others were less kind. She overheard conversations speculating about what favors she must have provided to catch a billionaire's attention. The comments stung, but she refused to let them derail her focus. You're handling this better than I would, Min-jun said one afternoon, finding her alone in the design studio. The whispers, the looks, it would drive me crazy. It does drive me crazy, she admitted. But I didn't come this far to let jealous people push me out. I earned my place here. My designs earned my place here. If people want to believe otherwise, that's their problem, not mine. That's the spirit. He grinned. By the way, I've been meaning to tell you. Your grandmother contacted me about some scholarship thing. Seo-yeon smiled. She wants to fund your studies abroad, if you're interested. Minjun's jaw dropped. You're joking. She's very serious. She believes in investing in talent. I don't know what to say. Say yes, and promise to come back and build something amazing for Korea. His eyes glistened. I promise. 3 weeks later, Kim Tae-sung was quietly transferred to Hanwoo's Busan office, a demotion disguised as a lateral move. His father, apparently, had reconsidered the wisdom of antagonizing the Kang family. Seo-yeon felt a grim satisfaction at the news, though she took no pleasure in anyone's downfall. Justice doesn't always come quickly, Ji-hoon said when she told him, but it usually comes. Is that a Kang family motto? No, that's something my grandmother used to say. She had a lot of wisdom for someone who grew up in poverty. Then Han Yoo-jin arrived. She appeared one morning without warning, escorted by Director Park himself. Everything about her was calculated to intimidate. The designer outfit that cost more than Seo-yeon's annual salary, the perfect makeup, the quiet confidence of someone who had never been denied anything in her life. Miss Yoon. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I've heard so much about you. I thought we should meet and clear the air. Miss Han. Seo-yeon kept her voice neutral, professional. I wasn't aware you had business with Hanwoo Architecture. I have business everywhere my family's investments reach. My father's firm is considering a stake in Director Park's company. I wanted to see what, and who, I'd be investing in. The implication was clear. Seo-yeon felt her colleague's eyes boring into her back. Then I hope you find everything satisfactory. She turned back to her computer screen. If you'll excuse me, I have a deadline to meet. Of course. Yoo-jin's voice hardened slightly. But Miss Yoon, a piece of advice from someone who's known the Kang family since childhood. Ji-hoon and I were promised to each other by our parents when we were 10 years old. Whatever you think you have with him, it won't last. He'll come to his senses eventually. Men like him always return to what they know. She swept away, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and barely concealed threat. Don't let her get to you. Minjun appeared at her elbow. She's all bark and designer heels. Her family could buy this company 10 times over and still have change left for a small country. Maybe. But they can't buy talent. He nodded at her screen, where her cultural center design glowed in the rendering software. That's going to change everything. Everyone who actually matters knows it. Seo-yeon wished she shared his confidence. The following week brought the design presentation. 5 architects stood before the board, each presenting their vision for the cultural center. Seo-yeon was the last to present. Whether by design or coincidence, she couldn't tell. She stood at the podium, her hands steadier than they had any right to be, and began to speak. She spoke about her grandmother's silk shop and how the building's facade would echo the flowing patterns of traditional hanbok fabric. She spoke about the temple where she'd once met a lost boy and how the interior spaces would create that same sense of unexpected sanctuary. She spoke about Seoul's transformation from ancient capital to modern megacity and how the cultural center could honor both identities without choosing sides. She explained the sustainability features, the living walls, the geothermal systems, the rainwater harvesting that would make the building nearly self-sufficient. She showed how the structure would change with the seasons, its gardens and courtyards transforming throughout the year like a living organism. When she finished, the room was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. Director Park, the board members, even her competitors, acknowledging something genuine. Thank you, Miss Yoon. Director Park's voice was thick with an emotion she couldn't identify. The board will deliberate and announce our decision tomorrow. That night, she found Ji-hoon waiting outside her apartment building, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He looked tired. She'd heard he was fighting his mother's plans on multiple fronts, but his smile when he saw her was genuine. I heard it went well. Who told you? I have sources. He handed her a cup. Walk with me? They strolled through the quiet streets of Mapogu, past convenience stores casting fluorescent light onto wet sidewalks, past late-night restaurants where ajumas served soju to weary salarymen, past the ordinary fabric of city life that made Seoul feel like home. It felt strangely intimate, this mundane journey, more real than all the champagne galas in the world. "What happens if I don't get the project?" she asked. "Then you try again, and again, until the world recognizes what I already know." "And what's that?" He stopped walking, turning to face her under the glow of a streetlight. Moths circled above them like tiny satellites. "That you're the most talented architect in Seoul, and the most stubborn woman I've ever met. And that I want to spend the rest of my life watching you build impossible things. Ji-hoon, I know your concerns. My mother, my family, the expectations, the engagement my parents planned. But I've spent 3 weeks doing something I should have done years ago, telling them the truth about what I want." He took her hands in his. "I told my father I'm not marrying you, Jin. I told my mother that her approval would mean everything, but not more than you. I told the board that I'm stepping back from European operations to focus on sustainable development here in Korea. Projects I actually believe in." "You did all that?" "I should have done it long ago. But sometimes it takes finding something worth fighting for to make you brave." She thought of a 14-year-old boy, crying on temple steps, lost in a world that expected him to have all the answers. She thought of the Jade Lotus, passed between two strangers, who didn't know they'd spend 15 years looking for each other. "I can't promise anything," she said finally. "I don't know if I'll win the project. I don't know if your mother will ever accept me. I don't know what the future holds. Neither do I." He smiled. "That's what makes it an adventure." She kissed him then, soft and certain, under the streetlight in the middle of an ordinary Seoul street. And for the first time in years, she let herself believe that something beautiful might actually be possible. The announcement came at noon the next day. The entire office gathered in the main conference room, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Director Park stood at the podium, envelope in hand, drawing out the moment with the practiced timing of a seasoned performer. After careful deliberation, the board has selected the architect who will lead the National Cultural Center project. He paused, savoring the attention. This decision was not easy. We received exceptional submissions from all 5 candidates, but one design stood above the rest, a vision that captures the soul of Korea while reaching toward the future. He opened the envelope. The lead architect for the National Cultural Center will be Yoon Seo-yeon. The room erupted. Applause, congratulations, the buzz of dozens of conversations starting at once. Seo-yeon stood frozen, unable to process what she'd heard. She had won, on merit, without favors or connections or lies. Through the crowd, she saw Min-jun grinning like a fool, giving her a thumbs up. Director Park nodded with what looked like genuine respect. And in the back of the room, half hidden in shadow, Ji-hoon, watching her with an expression of such pure pride that it made her heart ache. Then she saw Yoo-jin. The woman stood near the exit, her face a careful mask that didn't quite hide the fury beneath. Their eyes met across the room. Something passed between them. An acknowledgement, perhaps, or a warning. The game wasn't over yet. Yoo-jin turned and walked out without a word. The celebration continued through the afternoon, but Seo-yeon slipped away early. She had somewhere more important to be. The hospital room was quiet, filled with soft afternoon light. Her grandmother lay propped against pillows, looking frailer than before, but alert, her eyes bright with the intelligence that age had never dimmed. "I heard the news," Yoon-hae said. "Your young man called me." "Of course he did." Seo-yeon sat beside the bed, taking her grandmother's weathered hand. "Halmione, I won. The cultural center. It's really happening." "I never doubted you would." A smile creased her grandmother's face. You were always meant for great things, my girl. Since you were small, building towers from wooden blocks and demanding to know why they kept falling down. Because I didn't understand load distribution. No. Yoonhee's grip tightened. Because you hadn't learned yet that some things need to fall before they can be rebuilt better. Seo-yeon thought of everything that had fallen in her life. Her parents, her childhood home, her certainty about the way the world worked, and everything that had been rebuilt in the wreckage. The surgery is scheduled for next week, she said. The doctors say you're strong enough now. Thanks to your young man's generosity. He has a name, Kang Ji-hoon. I know who he is. Yoonhee's eyes twinkled. The same lost boy from 15 summers ago. I recognized him the moment he walked in. You knew? Why didn't you say anything? Because some things need to be discovered, not told. She reached up to touch Seo-yeon's face. He looked at you then the same way he looks at you now. Like you're the only real thing in a world of shadows. Halmayoni, listen to me. Her grandmother's voice grew serious. His world is complicated. His family even more so. There will be obstacles, challenges, people who want to tear you apart. But if you love him, truly love him, don't let anything stop you. Life is too short for the cowardice of what-ifs. I do love him, Seo-yeon admitted aloud for the first time. I think I've loved him since I was 14 years old, and I didn't even know his name. Then fight for it, with everything you are. The surgery came and went. Seo-yeon sat in the waiting room for 6 hours. Ji-hoon beside her, their hands intertwined. When the doctor finally emerged with news that the tumor had been successfully removed, she wept in Ji-hoon's arms like a child. She's going to be okay, she kept saying. She's going to be okay. She's a fighter, Ji-hoon murmured against her hair. Like her granddaughter. Recovery was slow but steady. Yoon-hae regained her strength day by day, eventually well enough to leave the hospital and move into a comfortable care facility where Seo-yeon could visit daily. The color returned to her cheeks, and she began asking about grandchildren with the pointed persistence of a woman who knew her time was precious. During one of these visits, Seo-yeon found Ji-hoon already there, sitting beside her grandmother's bed with a cup of tea. They were laughing about something, and the scene struck her. This billionaire's son, completely at ease with a former silk merchant from the provinces. Am I interrupting? She asked from the doorway. Never. Ji-hoon stood to greet her with a kiss. Your grandmother was just telling me about the time you tried to redesign her shop when you were 12. I was trying to improve the customer flow, Seo-yeon protested. You knocked down a supporting beam, Yoon-hae said dryly. The roof nearly collapsed. I learned a lot from that experience. Yes, that architects should perhaps wait until they have formal training before attempting structural modifications. Ji-hoon laughed, and Seo-yeon felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was what family felt like. Not the formal dinners and strategic alliances of the Kang household, but laughter and teasing and unconditional love. I should tell you both something, Yoon-hae said, her voice growing serious. I've decided to sell the property in Jeonju, the land where the silk shop used to stand. Halmayoni, you don't have to do that. Ji-hoon's already covered the medical expenses. This isn't about money. Yoon-hae reached for her hand. I'm old enough to know that holding on to the past can become a prison. That land holds memories, beautiful ones. But it's time for someone else to create their own memories there. What will you do with the money? I've been thinking about that. Her grandmother's eyes sparkled. There's a young designer at your company. Min Jun, I believe his name is. He mentioned wanting to study sustainable architecture abroad but can't afford it. I thought a scholarship might be appropriate. The Yoon Family Scholarship for Aspiring Architects. Seo-yeon's eyes filled with tears. Even now, after everything, her grandmother was thinking about how to help others. That's perfect, Halmione. I learned from you, Yunhai said simply, that the best way to honor the past is to invest in the future. Meanwhile, work on the cultural center began in earnest. Seoyeon threw herself into the project with a passion that bordered on obsession, determined to create something worthy of everything she'd been given. She met with contractors, negotiated with suppliers, solved problems that arose weekly. The building began to take shape, first in her mind, then in the ground. Ji-hoon was a constant presence, attending site visits, reviewing plans, offering insights from his own business experience. But he never overstepped, never tried to control. He simply supported. It was a revelation to Seoyeon, who had spent her entire adult life fighting every battle alone. You don't have to do everything yourself anymore, he told her one evening as they reviewed construction schedules in her apartment. That's what partners are for. Partners? She looked up from her laptop. Partners, in every sense of the word. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. I was going to wait until the building was finished, but I've waited 15 years already. I don't want to wait anymore. Inside the box was a ring, not ostentatious, not flashy, just a simple band of white gold with a single jade stone carved in the shape of a lotus. This was my grandmother's, he said. The original pendant. I had it reset after I found you again. My grandmother, she would have loved you, I think. She was the only person in my family who understood that wealth means nothing without purpose. Tell me about her. Ji-hoon's eyes grew distant. She was the daughter of a poor scholar who married into the Kang family when it was just a small trading company. She watched my grandfather build an empire, but she never forgot where she came from. Every year, she would visit the village where she grew up and help fund the school there. She taught me that kindness is the only currency that matters. She sounds wonderful. She died when I was 16, a year after I met you in Jeonju. His voice caught. I think that's why I kept looking for you. You reminded me of her, the way she saw people for who they really were, not what they could offer. Seoyeon took the ring from the box, watching the jade catch the light. She gave you the lotus pendant. For protection, she said, but also as a reminder that beautiful things can grow from the mud. He took her hand. When I gave it to you, I didn't understand what I was doing. I just knew you needed it more than I did. And now I'm asking you to keep it forever. Not as protection. You're brave enough to protect yourself, but as a promise that I'll always be beside you, whether you're building towers or watching them fall. Ji-hoon. Words failed her. Yoon Seoyeon. He knelt before her, this man who commanded boardrooms and moved markets, looking up at her with vulnerability that took her breath away. You taught a lost boy that kindness exists. You reminded a bitter man that dreams matter. You showed the world what talent and determination can accomplish. I don't want to own you. I don't want to control you. I just want to stand beside you while you build your impossible towers. Will you let me? She dropped to her knees beside him, cupping his face in her hands. Yes. The kiss that followed tasted like coming home. News of the engagement spread rapidly through Seoul's elite circles. The response was mixed. Some praised Ji-hoon's independence, his refusal to submit to arranged marriage. Others whispered about gold diggers and social climbing and the decline of traditional values. Social media exploded with opinions from people who had never met either of them. Kang Myung-hee said nothing. Her silence was somehow more intimidating than any words could have been. Then, 3 months after the engagement, she summoned them both to the Kang family estate. The mansion sat in the hills above Pyeongchang-dong, all clean lines and traditional gardens and the kind of understated elegance that screamed old money. Seoyeon had dressed carefully, choosing a simple navy dress that said professional, without trying too hard. Myung-hee received them in a study lined with art that was worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. A Monet, a Kim Wanki, a scroll of ancient calligraphy that looked museum-worthy. She looked older than Seo-yeon remembered, more tired, though her posture remained impeccable. Sit. It wasn't a request. They sat. I've been watching, Myung-hee began without preamble. The Cultural Center project, your performance reviews, the way you interact with my son. Seo-yeon kept her expression neutral, bracing for whatever blow was coming. I also met with your grandmother. That she hadn't expected. You did? Remarkable woman, sharp as a blade, even recovering from brain surgery. Myung-hee's lips twitched in something that might have been admiration. She told me about your childhood, about your parents, about the silk shop in Jeonju, where she first met a crying boy who later turned out to be my son. Mother, Ji-hoon started. Let me finish. She held up a hand. I have spent 60 years in this family. I have learned that power must be protected. That legacy must be preserved. That emotion is a luxury the Kangs cannot afford. These beliefs served me well, but they also blinded me. She turned to Seo-yeon, her gaze searching. You have no pedigree, no fortune, no connections I value. By every metric I have used to judge people for 6 decades, you are unsuitable. Seo-yeon's heart sank, but your grandmother said something that has stayed with me. Myung-hee's voice softened almost imperceptibly. She said that Seo-yeon builds things that last, not for money or status, but because creating beauty is the only way she knows how to love. Silence hung in the room like held breath. I have watched my son these past months, Myung-hee continued. He is different, lighter, more certain of himself. He speaks of sustainable development and cultural preservation and projects that actually matter. He speaks like a man who has finally found his purpose. She rose from her chair, moving to stand before the window. The gardens below were pristine, carefully manicured, perfectly controlled. I spent so many years trying to control this family, arranging marriages, orchestrating mergers, building an empire. But empires crumble, Miss Yoon. Marriages arranged without love produce heirs, but not happiness, and control. She turned back to face them. Control is the illusion we tell ourselves when we cannot accept uncertainty. Ji-hoon reached for Seo-yeon's hand. My own marriage was arranged, Myung-hee continued, her voice distant. I was 20 years old, fresh from university, with dreams of becoming a diplomat. My father told me that the Kang family needed a bride, and that was that. I learned to love my husband eventually, or at least to respect him. But I always wondered what might have been. Mother, I never knew, because I never told you. I thought protecting you from my regrets was kindness. Instead, I almost inflicted the same fate on you. She met Ji-hoon's eyes. Your father and I have discussed it. The arranged marriage was a mistake. We release you from that obligation. The words hung in the air like a benediction. What changed? Ji-hoon asked quietly. Your grandmother's words, actually. Mrs. Yoon told me something when we met. She said that the mark of a wise woman isn't never making mistakes. It's recognizing them before they become permanent. Myung-hee's lips curved slightly. I've been foolish, but I hope I'm not too old to learn. I do not give my blessing easily, Myung-hee said. I do not promise warmth or affection or immediate acceptance, but I am willing to try, for my son's sake, and perhaps for my own. The breath Seo-yeon had been holding escaped in a rush. Thank you, Mrs. Kang. Do not thank me yet. Prove me right. A ghost of a smile crossed Myung-hee's face. Build your impossible towers, Miss Yoon. Show the world what a girl from Jeonju can do. I will. Seo-yeon stood, meeting her future mother-in-law's eyes without flinching. I promise you that, in the months leading up to the wedding, Seo-yeon found herself navigating a world she had never imagined entering. The Kang family, despite Myung-hee's grudging acceptance, came with obligations and expectations that tested her patience daily. There were charity galas where she was expected to charm donors, business dinners where her opinions on architecture were actually sought and valued, family gatherings where distant relatives assessed her worthiness with barely concealed scrutiny. Through it all, Ji-hoon remained steadfast, shielding her when he could, supporting her when he couldn't. "I feel like I'm always performing," she confessed one evening, after a particularly grueling dinner with Kang Corporation's board of directors. "Like the real me isn't good enough for your world." "My world?" Ji-hoon pulled her close. "You are my world. Everything else is just scenery." "That's very poetic for a businessman." "I learned from an architect who sees poetry in concrete and steel." The cultural center construction continued to dominate her professional life. Every day brought new challenges: supply chain issues, design modifications, weather delays. She spent hours on site, hard hat firmly in place, watching her vision slowly become reality. One afternoon, she found an unexpected visitor at the construction site, Han Yoo-jin. "I thought we should talk," Yoo-jin said, her designer heels incongruous against the dusty ground. Properly this time, without an audience. Seo-yeon led her to a quieter corner of the site, where scaffolding rose like a skeleton toward the sky. "I'm listening." "I was angry for a long time. When Ji-hoon broke off our engagement, my family lost face. Business deals fell through. People whispered that I wasn't good enough to keep a Kang interested." Yoo-jin's perfect composure flickered. "But I've had time to think about what I actually lost versus what I thought I lost. And what did you conclude?" "That I never loved him. I loved the idea of him, the security, the status, the life I would have had. But love?" She shook her head. "I wouldn't have recognized it if it appeared in front of me." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm getting married next month, to someone I actually chose. Someone who makes me laugh and challenges me and sees me as more than a business merger." Yoo-jin met her eyes. "I wanted you to know that you didn't take anything from me. You just showed me what I was missing." Seo-yeon didn't know what to say. The woman before her was so different from the Ice Queen who had threatened her months ago. "I hope you'll be happy," she finally said. "I already am." Yoo-jin smiled, a real smile this time. "Take care of Ji-hoon. He deserves someone who loves him for himself, not his name." She walked away, heels clicking against the concrete, leaving Seo-yeon standing among the rising bones of her dream. The wedding took place the following spring, in a small ceremony at the temple in Jeonju, where Seo-yeon had once given shelter to a lost boy. Cherry blossoms drifted down like pink snow, covering the courtyard in petals. Her grandmother sat in the front row, fully recovered, dabbing at her eyes with a silk handkerchief she had saved from the old shop. Myung-hee attended, stiff but present, a concession that meant more than she would ever say. Director Park and Min-jun represented Hanwoo architecture. Friends from school and work filled the small courtyard. Even Han Yoo-jin sent flowers, along with a card that read simply, "Congratulations, he made the right choice." But the moment Seo-yeon would remember forever came just before the ceremony, when Ji-hoon found her in the preparation room. "You're not supposed to see me before the wedding," she protested, though her heart wasn't in it. "I never was very good at following rules." He took her hands, his eyes bright with emotion. "I have something for you." He pressed a piece of paper into her palm, yellowed, creased, clearly ancient. She unfolded it carefully. A child's drawing, faded but still recognizable. 2 stick figures standing before a tall building, one noticeably taller than the other. Above them, in wobbly Korean characters, "My friend Seo-yeon will build the biggest tower in the world." "You kept this," she whispered, "all these years." "I told you. I never stopped looking for you." She laughed through tears. This impossible man who had carried a child's drawing across 15 years and 3 continents. I love you, Kang Ji-hoon. I love you too, Yoon Seo-yeon. He kissed her forehead. Now, go build your towers. 2 years later, the National Cultural Center opened to international acclaim. Critics praised its innovative blend of traditional Korean aesthetics and sustainable design. Visitors wept at its beauty. Architecture journals dedicated entire issues to its conception and execution. Foreign architects made pilgrimages to Seoul just to walk its halls. The opening ceremony drew dignitaries from around the world. The President of Korea cut the ribbon. Ministers gave speeches. Media from dozens of countries captured every moment. But for Seo-yeon, the most meaningful moment came hours later, when the crowds had dispersed and she could finally walk through her creation in peace. The building breathed around her. Light filtered through the glass panels in ever-changing patterns, just as she had designed. The gardens whispered with the sound of water features and wind through carefully chosen plants. Every material, every angle, every space had been crafted with intention. She found her grandmother sitting in the central courtyard, beneath a cherry tree that had been transplanted from Jeonju. Yoon-hae was crying silently, her weathered face turned toward the sky. Halmyeoni, are you all right? I'm better than all right. Yoon-hae wiped her eyes. I'm sitting inside a building my granddaughter created. A building that will stand for 100 years, maybe more. How many people can say that? How many people get to touch immortality? It's just a building. No. Eun-hae took her hand. It's proof that a girl from a silk shop can change the world. It's proof that dreams matter. It's proof that your parents... Her voice broke. Your parents would be so proud. They are proud. I feel them here somehow. Seo-yeon sat beside her grandmother, and together they watched the shadows lengthen across the courtyard. Generations of hopes and sacrifices had led to this moment. Her parents' dreams, her grandmother's faith, Ji-hoon's unwavering support, all of it crystallized in these walls. Later, at the grand opening celebration, Seo-yeon stood on the rooftop garden, Ji-hoon beside her, their infant daughter sleeping in his arms. Below them, the building spread like a flowering lotus, each petal containing galleries, performance spaces, and gardens that changed with the seasons. You did it, Ji-hoon murmured. We did it. She leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his body, the small weight of their child between them. None of this would exist without you. I just wrote some checks and attended some meetings. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. That's worth more than any check. He pressed a kiss to her temple. What's next then? What impossible thing will you build now? Seo-yeon looked out at Seoul spreading below them, the city that had given her everything and demanded everything in return. She thought of her grandmother, now living comfortably in a hanok house in the countryside. She thought of the architecture students who wrote to her for advice, seeing in her story proof that dreams were possible. She thought of the little girl in her husband's arms, who would grow up knowing that anything worth having was worth fighting for. I don't know yet, she admitted, but I know I won't be building it alone. Ji-hoon pulled her closer, their daughter stirring slightly in his arms. Below them, Seoul pulsed with light and life, a city constantly rebuilding itself, constantly reaching toward the future while honoring its past. Just like her. Remember when you told me you had nothing to offer, he murmured. You were wrong. You offered me everything that matters. A chance to be myself. A reason to fight for what I believe. A love that doesn't ask me to be anyone other than who I am. That's what you gave me too, she whispered back. And standing there, between past and future, between the person she had been and the person she had become, Seo-yeon finally understood what her grandmother had meant all those years ago. Some things need to fall before they can be rebuilt better. But some things, the important things, are meant to last forever.